don't really know much about this show yet, to be honest, because it's just started. I do know it's about an editor who's pulled into some conspiracy. Anthony Edwards is in it, who's in ER. I also know the pilot anyway is directed by Pierre Morel. He also directed Taken, which is, well, I really enjoyed it anyway, so it's a good sign. The writer is Paul Scheuring, I think that's how you pronounce it. He wrote The Experiment, but he also created Prison Break, so it evens out. So I'm quite excited for this, so I'm just going to dive straight into episode 1 now. You'll see my reaction and review at the end. So I watched the pilot last night. I'm just going to go over what happened in it, and I'll tell you what I thought about it at the end. The episode starts with a flashback to Germany under Nazi rule in 1938. We see two priests speaking of a prophecy coming true, and that a child with weird eyes has been born, but not from a womb. The priests and a small community gather in a church and speak very vaguely about some object they possess. They agree that they must hide it from the Nazis as they would use it for evil. A Nazi general then enters the church, warning them that an SS patrol is about to arrive. The priests thank him and are therefore able to transport the object out of the church before they're all slaughtered. So a mysterious start. The next scene's back in present day in New York, where we meet Hank and Layla. They've been happily married for many years, though the cheesy dialogue would suggest they've been dating for about 2 weeks. They're both walking down a street full of street merchants, and Layla spots a mysterious clock. Hank goes to work, where he's the editor of Modern Skeptic magazine. He tells his junior reporters, Aaron and Rachel, that he'll only allow stories based on facts into the magazine, and that the first report on a story isn't always the true one. So Hank's a little bit like Jeff Daniels from the newsroom, only a lot more irritating. Hank then receives a phone call from his wife Layla, even though they were literally in the last scene together. Hank answers the phone, and instead of saying, "I'm at work, stop bothering me," he's like, "Oh, hey sweetheart." Layla's in trouble. She's in her shop and someone is trying to break in. She called Hank to tell him to call the police when she could have just done that herself. Hank makes it to his wife's shop before the police do, to find the place turned over and his wife missing. Hank explains to a police officer that none of this really makes sense. His wife's shop only repairs broken clocks and doesn't make much profit, so why would anyone choose to break in there? Hank, Aaron and Rachel decide to take a hands-on approach to Layla's disappearance and figure out why Layla was actually taken. Hank then notices a clock in a plastic bag that he hasn't seen before, but we know it's the same clock that Layla was looking at in the marketplace. The doorbell then rings. Agent Rebecca Riley and Agent Tim from the FBI are there and want to ask Hank some questions. The agents tell Hank that White Vincent is the one who took his wife, and they've been investigating him for some time. They then show some CCTV footage of White Vincent kidnapping Layla to Hank, which was a little bit insensitive. Agent Riley is also confused why White Vincent would be interested in Layla, so she seems to believe that maybe Layla is somehow involved with White Vincent, or she has a dark past. This accusation offends Hank. Hank chooses not to mention the clock to Agent Riley and waits until she and Agent Tim leave before he starts to investigate it. After dissecting the clock, Hank finds a diamond buried inside it. Aaron then notices that when light shines through this diamond, you can see a treasure map. They're not able to make out any of the writing from the map, so the three of them seek help from the priest, played by Charles S. Dutton. He's one of those actors that you recognise and you're not sure what from because he's in everything but always as a side character. The priest is able to identify the odd symbols on the map and dates it back to the 2nd century. Hank says this is impossible because there were no maps of the Western Hemisphere available back then. The priest then tells Hank that this is an amazing discovery and they are rewriting history just by finding it, though the priest seems to be the only one remotely interested. Hank gets a phone call from White Vincent, and White Vincent is willing to keep Layla alive as long as he gets the clock in exchange. The priest convinces Hank that if they hand the clock over to White Vincent, he'll kill Layla anyway. He suggests they should give him the clock but keep the diamond for themselves. Hank decides to also inform the FBI. Hank tells Agent Riley that White Vincent arranged a drop-off point for cash instead of revealing to her about the clock and diamond. Hank also decides to let the priest hold on to the diamond for safekeeping. Hank goes to the drop-off point and follows instructions from White Vincent over the phone, a bit like in Die Hard 3. The FBI are hopelessly trying to track the phone call but get nowhere. It turns out that White Vincent was actually smarter than all of them, as this was all just a distraction because the real target is the priest, who he somehow knew had the diamond all along. After Hank and the FBI realise this, Hank yet again is the first one on the scene. He runs through the monastery to find that the priest has been severely wounded and the diamond is gone. Luckily, the priest hasn't been killed off because he's the only decent character on this show. I'm just kidding, he's just as bad as the rest. Agent Riley and Hank then have an argument, as she knows that Hank is withholding information. But for some reason Hank doesn't want to tell her about his discovery. After a lot of cheesy dialogue, Rachel convinces Hank not to give up and that he should go to the coordinates that they saw on the map. Hank decides to go alone, leaving Aaron and Rachel to find out more about the clock and maybe go back to their jobs. The coordinates lead to Canada, but just before he can get on the plane, Agent Riley intercepts him. She tells Hank that he should trust her and that her husband died in a terrorist act caused by White Vincent. Agent Riley tells Hank that she's going to go with him. Meanwhile, Aaron works out who made the clock and convinces Rachel to travel with him to meet the clockmaker in Germany. White Vincent is in a hotel room, and after he takes out his contacts, we see that he is the child with the weird eyes the priest prophesied about, only he's gotten older. Though if he was born in 1938, he should be about 75 now, even though Walter Vincent looks about 48. So is that a plot hole, or will that be explained later? We meet 93-year-old Norbert, who is the clockmaker. He reveals to Aaron and Rachel that there is more than one of these clocks. He also tells them that the coordinates that Hank is following lead to a man called New Bartholomew. Apparently when Nazis were in rule, an underground organisation wanted to keep a secret away from the Nazis. So they appointed 12 new disciples and a clock was made for each one. Norbert made his clock for New Bartholomew, whoever he is. The secret they kept from the Nazis is unknown by Norbert. He said only the 12 disciples knew what this was. But we do know it was the mysterious object at the start of the episode, hidden by the priests. It seems to be something to do with eternal life. Agent Riley and Hank make it to the coordinates and find an old Nazi submarine. Hank finds Bartholomew in the submarine, but the twist is, Bartholomew looks exactly like Hank. The episode then ends. The problem with the pilot is that it's relying too much on the exciting storyline, I think. A lot happens in this episode, and as you can see, it's trying to be a lot like a mixture of National Treasure and the Da Vinci Code. An exciting story is obviously a good thing, but every show as a starting point needs strong and relatable characters. This show just does not have that at the moment. This is actually the same problem I had with the show Terra Nova. The plot was really fast-paced with dinosaurs, but all the characters were one-dimensional, therefore I couldn't connect with any of them, and I actually found it kind of boring. Mad Men, on the other hand, is the complete opposite. The episodes are slow-paced, but all the characters have a lot of depth to them. It's as if they are real people, so you can choose who you like or hate, and it makes the show very interesting, in my opinion. So you can have a lot of action and running around, but if the characters in the script are not well written, then it's pointless. Saying that, it's just a pilot. The first episode of Spartacus Blood and Sand was awful, but now it's one of my favourite shows. So hopefully the characters are going to develop as well as the storyline in the next few episodes, making the show more enjoyable. I don't think the name of the next episode of Zero Hour has been released yet, but I know it's going to air on the 21st, so I'll be watching that. Anyway, thanks for watching.